We will now hear from Professor José Sanmartin at the University of Alicante.
Thank you, Mr. Pittenger, and congratulations for the forum. Thank you also for this perfect work. And this is an extraordinary occasion for Spain also. I'm going to speak in Spanish for different reasons. Now I have to translate my original paper in English to Spanish. La desinformación es una guerra.
So misinformation is a war, a full global war, and it is part of a network that comprises many different elements. We need to take into account that it's a part of a whole, not the whole in itself. The whole is the subversion, the delegitimation, and of course to promote radicalism through the irrationality expanded in society. That means generating figures of hatred and of course the cultivation of hatred as a political asset, but not just in that scope, but also in the media. And that's quite important because hereafter the problem will worsen, it will not improve. And I'll explain why quite briefly. And I'm going to explain that in Spanish to be a bit quicker. So it's about creating black beasts, an old historical figure. So misinformation is based on creating black beasts that somehow manage to unite the hatred, the fury, and all the negative elements cognitively against an idea, a person, or even an institution. So it is about looking for culprits, whether they're innocent or not, that's indifferent. It's about generating internal and external division. And thereafter we need to take into account the aim is to infiltrate ideas and people who are toxic within decision-making areas. And that's key. That could be done through the media, the press, politics, different elements. And it's a product. The way to fight misinformation is very simple. The first victory of our enemies is to make us believe that it's a cultural or political combat. But it's a crime. We're talking about criminality. We're not talking about a strictly intellectual or political debate. It's got nothing to do with politics. It's a toxic acid which is poisoned, and it tries to subvert the order, usually democratic, in a country to delegitimize institutions and achieve further objectives. How can we revert that? Because it's a product. And that product responds to economic parameters. We always have economic interests on the line. It's not done for free. That could be done by an individual who's in love with a Hollywood star, for example, but in 99% of cases there is a economic and mercantile purpose, and of course a desire to conquest the power and to colonize the territorial power, even the business power sometimes. We should not forget that. There's always something behind, and the key to the investigation is to discover what underlies and crush it, destroy it, just finish with it, literally. We need to destroy those toxic sources of money that move everything. So what's the problem? One of the most important problems is that parties in democracies confront each other and use misinformation. They're all against the misinformation going against them, but they're not so much against misinformation damaging others. In that way, mercantile misinformation as a product, as a global product, is successful because always some politician will say, go ahead with it. That goes, that doesn't. Either we have a pact with all the countries at the state level, or misinformation will keep expanding massively as it's happening now. What I'm saying is that the misinformation that we are sorry about now is nothing compared to what we'll have in 3 years. The progression is negative and things will worsen. And with AI, we better not speak about it, but it's a massive problem. And the way to understand all that is by professionalizing all the elements investigating misinformation, because that will take you to the key element to give stability to your country. And the main target of misinformation is to generate instability, even psychological. The fact that you constantly question your government, your authorities, and your legitimate authorities, and so on. All that, if it doesn't take us to a solution, will be a problem. Why? Because we'll have companies who will have larger power than governments, and it's already happening. And that's something that, as Mr. Federici said, the organized crime is doing that with cartels and large economic powers that are quite murky to use a kind synonyming. So we need a state agreement, an international agreement regarding misinformation, and all misinformation should be combated. And the way to combat it is not to restrict the freedom of opinion or expression, pretty much the opposite. It means getting to investigate the crux of the matter regarding the economic interests. Hereafter, the house of cards will tumble, and it represents challenges to legitimate states, authorities and institutions. Implementing only defensive measures is an invitation to be attacked. That's a golden rule that all toxic elements of misinformation clearly know. If they only give me these defensive measures for affected states to get protected, there's no problem. They will keep attacking. You're inviting the attacker to keep attacking you if you only apply defensive techniques. So what's the best answer? To attack. I am sorry. I am deeply sorry.
But we need to attack, whether we like it or not. We have to attack, be aggressive, violent, ruin them economically, destroy their toxic source of money, and with that kind of economic and entrepreneurial emporium, responding to parameters of interested wills. And it's true, there are some countries that practice disinformation as clients, not only as practitioners. They hire those services that are carried out by those who have got a huge amount of money and that can manage it. Lies are being said against legitimate states, accusing them of atrocities. Some case might be true and a specific point, but there's an indecent material. How can we combat that? Fighting in the internet, banning images? That's ridiculous. They will always pass through. The important thing is to crush their economic sources. What does this mean? That the appointments that need to be done in intelligence services need to be technicians, qualified people responding to rational parameters, not to political and ideological criteria of fights against parties, placing their people and punishing the other party when they're in power. Parties need to reach an agreement, otherwise it will be impossible to combat disinformation. That's the strength that disinformers have. Either have an agreement of states, as General de Gaulle did. Yes, we need these statespeople, not politicians. There are politicians that are statespeople, yes, in every country. So those politicians that are statespeople get to power. With that people, the problem will be solved. The problem is the politician that uses misinformation to harm the others in the parliament. That is full death of all kinds of attempts to end with misinformation, because this information is a business. It's business and business. It's worthwhile that it creates subversion, radicalism, and irrationality as the spiritual food is spread out. And that's how you dominate as part of the population, not the full of the population, but with that cultivation of hatred, you will have a part of the country under your slash and under your whip, and the intelligent people will have a very hard time to pass through. Another key element is to provide means to the intelligence agencies. They don't have means. The means they have are scarce, and usually they lack materials and technology. We need a higher investment in Western systems and other areas in the world. In South America, they need a lot of intel material and professionalization, but also here in Europe, we need a great deal of equipment. And then we also have to have in mind that radicalism and sectarism are product of a global market, and that is bought, that is procured, purchased. You want a country, you want to generate a major problem, you can question the government, you can manufacture not only fake news, but also truths that you can generate toxic products that question the government. And that is happening today in the US, in France, in Spain, all around the world. And that has to be paid. There is a market, it's not being researched. And that's not being investigated. And that is what I'm saying here is politically incorrect. We shouldn't be speaking about that because there are many vested interests, and the victims sometimes becoming clients, and the clients always end up being victims of those networks. So be very careful. That's why it's so important to have a good of several intelligence services that are professional, intelligent, and the best paid, the best of the best, with the best training and the best resources. That is fundamental to investigate economic intelligence, misinformation, but also money laundering, asset laundering. That is fundamental, and it's been said here. We have to have all that in mind. Misinformation agents are not isolated. They're part of a network. 20, 30 years ago, yes, that little disinformation were isolated elements, but now the network is really huge. And some states are clients of those networks, and those networks work like a criminal waterfall. So we have to have in mind that misinformation is based on several elements. That black beast over which we have to go against. Today we might have one, tomorrow another one, but we can create a new narrative which is fake, generating counter narratives that can feed the negative and toxic discourse. And I repeat toxic because that's what best defines this element. And then there is a national cult of harming, and I was a victim, as I'm persecuted, and that element. Am I fine with time? Is my time over? 2 minutes? Okay, thank you. So that creation of an irrational cult is fundamental. From that element, an intel service that is well prepared with means and resources, and I mean money for you to clearly understand, we need much more money. We have to invest a great deal in intelligence in every country. That will generate a unity of an immediate response with that approach, providing a good reaction from the state. How is that done? By expropriating goods, seizing the money, punishing. And that's amongst with agreements between states, taking them what they like the most, their properties, their money, wherever that is located. That's what harms them the most, and that's how they will respond. If you want to have a campaign against your head of state, your government, your institutions, and your country, and the basis is 1,000 kilometers away from your border, the investigation cannot stop at your border. You have to reach till the end and punish those aggressors. Money is key. Follow the money and you'll have success. If you don't punish with money, this information will continue. Thank you very much.